Hello dear students, let's move ahead with the next type of problem on estimation of working capital. In the previous video we have seen how do we estimate working capital when cost per unit is given or cost structure is given. In this problem, though the cost structure is given, it is given in terms of percentages. Okay, so how do we convert this into cost per unit and then how do we estimate the working capital is what we are going to see in this particular problem. So let's start from the following particulars. Estimate working capital required with 10% contingencies and minimum cash balance of 50,000. So here they have clearly said that we have to add 10% contingencies and the minimum cash balance that we have to maintain is 50,000 rupees. Particulars and percentage is given. So raw material is 60%. Labor is 10% and overheads is 10%. So understand, in the previous problem that we have solved, these values were given as cost per unit, but in this particular problem these are given as percentages. Okay, so first we have to convert these into cost per unit or total cost and then use it in the calculation of estimation of working capital. Other information given to us is raw material are in stock for 6 weeks, 30% of work is in process for 3 weeks, finished goods are kept in stock for 4 weeks, average collection period is 1 week. Okay, so raw material is given 6 weeks, current assets. Here work in process, if you see in the previous video that we just saw, they had not given how much percentage of work is in process. So we assume that 50% and we assumed raw material at 100%, labor at 50% and overheads at 50%. But in this particular problem they have clearly mentioned 30% of the work is in process. 30% of the work is in process. So here we have to consider 100% of raw material but only 30% of labor and 30% of overhead. Okay. Details we'll see when we go to the solution. Then finished goods are kept in stock for 4 weeks. So it's clearly mentioned. Average collection period, that means collection. From whom do we collect? We collect it from debtors. So this is related to debtors. Average collection period is related to debtors. It is 1 month. Now another difference if you see is all the details are given in weeks except collection period which is in months. It doesn't make any difference. If it is in months, then it would be divided by 12. If it is in weeks, it would be divided by 52. Accordingly, you have to change the formula or the values in the formula. Then payment for purchase of raw material is made after 2 weeks. Now payment for purchase of raw material means it is creditors, because we purchase raw materials from the creditors and we are paying them after 2 weeks. So they are creditors for us. Then payment of wages are delayed by 1 week. So these are outstanding wages, again current liability, and overheads are paid 2 weeks in advance. Now here you have to be very careful. They have said 2 weeks in advance. That means you are paying it prior. That means it is a current asset. You are paying it in advance. Okay, it's not a current liability. Okay, in the previous problem, overheads were delayed. The payment of overheads were delayed. So we took it as current liability. But in this particular problem, they have said overheads are paid 2 weeks in advance. So they are current liabilities now. Then level of activity given is 2 lakh units, selling price is 40 per unit. Okay, since here if you see selling price is given because this detail is given in percentages. So they have to give selling price per unit. Otherwise we would not be able to go ahead with the problem. Okay, so 2 lakh units and selling price is 40 per unit. Then 3/4 of the sales is done on credit basis. So 1/4 is cash and we have to consider only 3/4 for debtors. We cannot consider full amount of debtors as working capital required. We have to consider only 3/4 of the total debtors, since only 3/4 is credit sales, remaining is cash sales. Okay. So let's go ahead with the solution. First thing that we need to do is, we have been given the selling price per unit, that is 40 rupees, 40 rupees is the selling price per unit, and the units sold are 2 lakh units. That means the level of activity is 2 lakh units and selling price is 40. So first we need to calculate is total cost. So what is the total sales? What is the total sales? It is 80 lakhs. That is 40 rupees per unit selling price into 2 lakh units. So 80 lakhs would be your total sales. Once we calculate the total sales, it becomes very easy for us to calculate the total cost, because percentage of costs are given. We can directly calculate the total cost. So how do we calculate that? First is raw material. So total sales is 80 lakhs, out of which 60% is raw material. So 60% of 80 lakhs, that is 48 lakhs, becomes your raw material, total raw material cost. Second is labor, which is 10. So 10% into 80 lakhs again becomes 8 lakhs. So 8 lakhs is your labor, total labor cost, and overheads is also 10%. So 8 lakhs again becomes your total overhead cost. So 48 lakhs is your total raw material cost, 8 lakhs is your labor cost, total labor cost, and 8 lakhs is your total overhead cost. So the total cost comes to 64 lakhs. Okay. Now once we have done this basic calculation of calculating the total cost, as we have done it in the previous problem also, the next part is we have to estimate the working capital. Now how do we estimate working capital? We have a format which we are ready with, that is particulars and rupees, and we take first is current assets and then less current liabilities. So under current assets, what is the first one? It is raw materials. As we have already discussed, raw material is working capital for raw material is calculated only on raw material cost. So what is the raw material cost? It is 48 lakhs. So 48 lakhs into 6 divided by 52. Why 6 divided by 52? Because it is kept in stock for 6 weeks. So 48 lakhs into 6 divided by 52 gives us 5,53,846. So this is how we calculate the working capital required for raw materials. Second is work is in process or work in process, sometimes also called as semi-finished goods. Now, it consists of 3 elements, that is raw material, labor and overheads. And they have said it is 30% of work is in process. That means we have to consider only 30%. So how do we go about this particular calculation? So under work in process, we have raw material, labor, overheads. Raw material total cost is 48 lakhs into the work is in process for 3 weeks. So 48 lakhs into 3 divided by 52 into 100%. Whatever percentage of work is in process doesn't matter. Raw material should always be 100% when we calculate work in process. Okay, so into 100%. Then labor total cost is 8 lakhs into 3 divided by 52, because work is in process for 3 weeks. So into 3 divided by 52 into 30%. Now why 30%? Because 30% of the work is in process. So we have to consider only 30%. And the same is the case with overheads. Total cost is 8 lakhs into 3 divided by 52, because the work is in process for 3 weeks. So into 3 divided by 52 into 30%. Why 30%? Again, because 30% of the work is in process. So once we do this calculation of raw material, labor and overheads for work in process, we have to take the total of this. We get 3,04,615. So 3,04,615 is the working capital required for work in process. Next is finished goods. Now finished goods are always calculated on total cost. So what is the total cost? It is 64 lakhs. So 64 lakhs into finished goods are kept in stock for 4 weeks. It's mentioned over here. So 64 lakhs into 4 divided by 52 gives us 4,92,308. So 4,92,308 is the working capital required for finished goods. Next is debtors. Here they have given average collection period is 1 month. So debtors, we have to calculate debtors also on the total cost. So 64 lakhs. So debtors is 64 lakhs into 1 divided by 12. Now your denominator is changing. Why? Because the data given is in months. So it is 1 month. So 1 divided by total number of months in a year, that is 12. So 1 divided by 12 into 3/4. Now why this 3/4 has come over here? Because we have to consider only credit sales for debtors. So how much is the credit sales? It's mentioned over here. 3/4 of the sales are done on credit basis. So only 3/4 has to be considered. So 64 lakhs into 1 divided by 12 into 3/4 gives us 4 lakhs. So 4 lakh is the working capital required for debtors. Next, current asset is cash. It is clearly mentioned minimum cash balance to be maintained is 50,000. So directly cash is 50,000. And next is overheads, because while reading the problem we have already discussed overheads are paid in advance. That means they are not current liabilities, they become current assets because they are paid in advance. So we have to consider overheads in current assets. So overheads paid in advance. How much is the total overheads? It is 8 lakhs into how many weeks in advance? It is 2 weeks in advance, right? 2 weeks in advance. So 8 lakhs into 2 divided by 52 gives us 30,769. With this, we complete all the current assets. So we take the total of the current assets, that is 5,53,846 plus 3,04,615 plus 4,92,308 plus 4 lakh plus 50,000 plus 30,769 gives us 18,31,538. So 18,31,538 becomes our gross working capital. On calculation of gross working capital, the next step is calculation of current liabilities or working capital required for current liabilities, because that has to be deducted. So under current liabilities, what all current liabilities we have? First is payment for purchase of raw material is made after 2 weeks. That means you are delaying the payment of what? Purchase of raw materials. That means you have purchased raw materials and you are paying it after 2 weeks. So it is creditors. So creditors are current liabilities. So creditors are always valued at raw material cost. So what is the raw material cost? Raw material cost is 48 lakhs and they are paid after 2 weeks. So 48 lakhs into 2 divided by 52 gives us 1,84,615. So 1,84,615 becomes the working capital for creditors. Okay. It's not actually the working capital that you require, but that is the working capital that you reduce, because these are the creditors and you're paying them after some days. Okay, so 1,84,000 is the working capital related to creditors. Next is payment of wages are delayed by 1 week. So you're delaying the payment. Again, it becomes outstanding. So outstanding wages is a current liability. So outstanding wages is always calculated, wages are always calculated on labor cost. So labor cost is, total labor cost is 8 lakhs. So 8 lakhs into, it's delayed by 1 week. So 8 lakh into 1 divided by 52 gives us 15,385. So 15,385 becomes our working capital estimate for outstanding wages. Once we calculate these two current liabilities, there are no other current liabilities given in the problem. So we have to calculate, go ahead to calculate net working capital. How do we calculate the net working capital? It is the gross working capital minus the total liabilities, current liabilities. So it is 18,31,538 minus 1,84,615 minus 15,385. So once we deduct the current liabilities from the gross working capital, we get the net working capital. So what is the net working capital? It is 16,31,538. Is it over? No, not yet, because they have said you have to add 10% contingencies. So add 10% contingencies. So contingencies are always calculated on net working capital. So what is the net working capital? It is 16,31,538 into 10%. That is 10 by 100 gives us 1,63,154. So once we add the contingencies to the net working capital, we get 17,94,692, which becomes our estimated working capital. So this is how we calculate estimated working capital when the cost structure is given in terms of percentage. The most important thing that you need to remember is converting the percentage into cost. I hope you're clear with this calculation of estimation of working capital when cost structure is given in percentage. In the next video, we'll try to solve some more problems related to estimation of working capital when cost structure is given, whether in terms of cost per unit or in terms of percentage. Thank you. Have a great learning.